Alex. I'm the president of EPRA, and I am delighted to have as one of our resource practitioners, Martin Robinson from IRIS. We're going to get into a lot of conversations with Martin, but the first thing I want to talk about is, Martin, you and I were sitting at an event, at a reliability event, and we began to talk about EPRA and creating the community and serving the practitioners. And when we talked about a company like IRIS and others, who the industry as a whole treats as vendors, and you come in and you do your thing, and they have speakers, and maybe sometimes you get to speak, but you're the working group chair of the EPRA working group for resource practitioners. Talk to me about what you see as the difference between a resource practitioner and what the rest of the world just basically calls vendors.
Great. Yeah, again, thanks for having me, Alan. It's been a journey, but we're getting it. I think one of the things we struggled again with that term when we were trying to identify what we were trying to achieve from what quasi vendors was, what are we going to call ourselves? Because as a vendor, we're looked on that people come in and say, oh, well, it's they're just coming to sell me something. They're not going to deliver anything, etc. So we do recognise as businesses we have to make money. We're not registered charities. We have staff that we have to pay and everything else. So we have responsibilities there. But I think what you and I were trying to achieve when we were looking at this was, something, we also have a great deal of experience. Much more experience in some ways than the companies we go and visit, because they're in their envelope. So if we're going to a data center guy or a paper mill or a steel mill or whatever, they're in that industry. Maybe that's the only industry they've ever been in. So what we were trying to do, something, if we come in and talk to them about the shared experiences that we have across multiple verticals, and what was successful and what wasn't, what was achieved and what wasn't. And we come to them more on a consultative basis than a sales basis. Then if they can see the value in reliability, that was it for us. So as a resource practitioner, we were coming in as practitioners, not as salesmen.
Right.
Albeit, so I always go through what we say is it's about the why of reliability. If I'm going to do this, it's that what's in it for me and all that, but why reliability works. So as a resource practitioner, it's our jobs to sell the why of reliability. But what we're really trying to do here is as a resource practitioner is to bring our shared experiences of implementation, etc., of reliability platforms. Because electrical, you and I know, if you look at the electrical industry, everybody talks about safety all the time. Safety, and it was like, man, if you don't get reliable, you're never going to get safe. And if you don't get safe, you're never going to get reliable.
So we know what the resource practitioners are about. What these profiles are about is it's profiling you, it's profiling IRIS, the company, but it's also allowing you to share that passion that you've got. And you've allowed me now to put a fence around this thing called resource practitioners. And that fence basically says, hey, if you've come to give, come and join us. If you come to take, go to a vendor. We might have vendors down the road where somebody we just
absolutely, but we're not that organization.
Your folks helped us in this roadshow that we did, where we had two groups of people that were givers and two groups that were takers. And by the time we finished the fourth roadshow, everybody was a giver, because we said we're going to throw you out if you don't talk about a higher thing. So it's brilliant. We've got 7 principles within what I'm looking at from the resource practitioner, 7 principles that I really do believe it is important for our resource practitioners to understand those 7 as it relates to the corporate practitioners, the people that we're all here to serve. And that first one is just what you said. In fact, you were the one that got me on this. You and Ron Moore, for some reason, within the same space of weeks, hit me up with safety and reliability. And it's leadership commitment to that. It's not just words, but really making a leadership commitment. And when we did our first EPRS, one of the things that everybody took away from your time there when you were doing your talks, your speed dating, and we'll talk about the EPRS and getting together at some other point, but you did the best job of connecting reliability and safety. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Ron is, and again, I'm glad you brought Ron up, because Ron has been the primary driver, I believe, of really making people think about safety and reliability. Obviously, as Iris, that's all I've ever been involved in, is the safety aspects of condition monitoring of electrical systems. So I've always had that safety and reliability hat on, but I'm the vendor. Yeah. So you understand what I mean. So if I'm telling people there's got to be something in it, I'm not actually delivering value or whatever, and the message sometimes get lost because we attend or we speak to people as vendors, where Ron is Ron Moore. I mean, he's renowned throughout our industry. He's one of what we class as the true gurus. If you look at people like Ron and Jack Nicholas and Doug Pluckman, Doc Palmer, all these sort of guys that we've been really bringing into EPRA as probably the heart of our organisation. They bring real integrity to the message. So I did an operational excellence workshop with Ron. And obviously at EPRS, we really brought that out as well. But, Ron has so much data that supports that message. And it was like, Ron, God bless you. Do you mind if I plagiarize? And he's like, look, he's like, Ron's a sharer. He's a lifelong sharer. He's like, yeah. So, and so the data was so compelling. And that data just didn't come from Ron. Ron was the catalyst to grab all this data from people like Klaus Back at the University of Tennessee, another true leader, John Schultz, Winston Leday, all these sort of real titans of our reliability industry. And this is reliability, not electrical, this is reliability, you know what I mean? So, and there was so much value to hitching ourselves to the safety wagon, because there's a safety manager. Safety has a budget. Safety has tangible value, and letting them understand that if we get safe, we get reliable. If we get reliable, we get safe, and so they get in. And what we're trying to do is really get the electrical industry to understand that they work in the most dangerous industry globally. It kills more people as a single entity. And what we're trying to do at EPRA is make them really understand that safety and reliability are the same thing. The same thing. If you achieve one, you'll get the other.
I keep spinning this coin in whichever way possible.
Absolutely,
Safety on one side, reliability on another. And as Ron Moore says, I got data.
He's got data on that. He's got data on everything. Yeah.
Talk to me about, and let's talk about Iris specifically. I've been through your plant, beautiful facility in Florida.
Thank you.
And I know you've got facilities all over the world, but talk to me a little bit about how you've introduced, because one of the things that struck me was you have both a standard shop and a custom shop. And yet you have a quality standard that I was quite shocked. I've been out there. I've seen the work, in industry, but I was really shocked at how well you have been able to maintain high quality standards with both a standard line and a custom line. Talk to me a little bit about how you've done that.
Well, we're, again, working in the electrical industry is very heavily policed. The standards that we have to work within UL and et cetera, the materials that we have to use, the testing that we have to do actually drives you to do that. And if you follow the guidelines from UL and IEEE, et cetera, plus then we're an ISO 9001 company. We're also an ISO 14001 company. So all of these standards, once you start adhering to them, and then the test requirements for electrical system components are very, very stringent as well. So you're looking at, the flammability testing and everything else. We working with companies like Lloyd's, DNB, ABS for marine, and so it goes on and on and on. So we are, by virtue of the industry we work within as manufacturers, forced to do that. Yeah, and then if you do that, it becomes second nature. So we're always looking at that in our design processes. As an industry, well, and again, I suppose we work in what we call electrical maintenance safety devices. But as an industry, when we looked at the custom solutions, it was about how can we build those. So when we went to UL, we spent a significant number of years with UL around designing the processes to support custom solutions. Because what we found is it's like, if there was only one car, you only get one choice. Wouldn't that be a boring world? There's 20,000 different, So you choose a system and a solution to match your requirements. And UL, the inspectors and the listers that we worked with, those guys were listening to that message and they understood, hang on, as reliability is evolving, as the implementation of reliable systems is evolving, so must the availability of those custom type solutions evolve as well. So in our industry, we were at sort of vanguard of pushing that. But that was all driven by customer requirements, not by me thinking, I know one day I'm going to wake up and do that. We looked at what our customers were asking for. And then we build so much custom product that even some of that custom, we're building so much of it, we make it a standard product, sizes and things like that. So it was, I'm lucky that I work within an industry that keeps me accountable. And accountability is something that means that drives performance, even in not just, in reliability. If nobody's accountable for something, it ain't going to happen.
Yes,
so I suppose it accounts. So we're happy that we do that. But like most of the reliability practitioners we've got, we've really got our finger on the pulse of the customer.
Yes.
We listen to them, we see what they're doing, we feel their pain, we empathise, and then our solutions are actually designed by them. We just build them.
Yeah. Okay, you just mentioned something about the empathetic approach that we take at EPRA. And part of that is, so one day you guys will get to decide if I'm a fellow. We have this group of people, and you named them, it's Ron Moore, and it's Jack Nicholas, and it's Doug Pluckman, and a lot of those people that are the heroes of reliability. Well, we've created a group within EPRA called Fellows, okay? And fellows are those people that made a difference, that brought about change. They may or may not be retired, like a lot of them do consulting still and, do keynote speaking and things like that. But we have a very unique group of fellows. We just added one, Skipper Yoakum, who was the head of reliability of Gerdau, all of Gerdau. Skipper retired, and I remember him sponsoring a gentleman named Juan Rodriguez in an area of transformer, taking all of their transformers, and that has now morphed into a lot more than that and putting them into a corporate program. Juan will be one of our guests at a future panel. But Skipper, I remember being in his office when he said, I'm going to sponsor that. Now, he was in charge of all reliability. He didn't think that there was an electrical reliability issue. He was one of the first corporate leaders that got the aha moment. So we made him a fellow. You will be a fellow one day, Martin, and here's why. And so I want you to comment on this. Fellows are people that are lifelong learners. If you think you know it all, you don't. Secondly, they're also willing to give what they have learned. That's what I loved about your presentation, and not just yours, everybody that came to our EPRS. One of the things that was different, and this came out in the evaluations, was I've never experienced anything like that, where all of these people that normally you call vendors were not talking about their product. They were all sharing what they have learned, and all of it was valuable. I mean, it was like overwhelming, a lot of content that came out of that. So lifelong learners and they're lifelong sharers. That's what makes a resource practitioner in my mind. But it's also what makes a corporate practitioner, because they're going through the same thing too. They're learning. There is this sense sometimes that we are proprietized. I've got my thing, you've got your thing. I can't share my thing because you might learn something about it. But you were one of the first that kind of approached this like this with open hands and said, look, if you learn and you go buy somebody else's product because it's better, cheaper, faster, do it, but do it right. And I think that's placed you and it's placed Iris in a very unique position. So I ramble, but I'm doing a recruitment for a future fellows because you're not done yet. Okay, you got a lot to do.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Talk to me about that whole idea and tie it into generational, because you've got this whole thing happening at your company where you're bringing in the next generation in manufacturing, the next generation in. We'll talk about your virtual thing where you put the head and I off. Okay, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But talk about this concept of us coming together as an organization and expecting everybody to learn and to share what they've learned.
Well, I think when we discussed the thing about bringing in what we call gurus or titans or leaders, and leaders is sometimes a very broadly used term, but there are certain people that if they become part of an organization, they bring a level of integrity and accountability to that organization. So you're not going to get people like, Jack Nicklaus and Ron Moore and Doug Plucknett and Doc Palmer and all the other chaps that we've approached to become part of EPRA unless they see the value in what we're trying to achieve. Yeah. So there's an old saying, a rising tide lifts all ships, and what we're trying to do is, again, it's very difficult to say these things about being seen as being evangelical or preaching. I don't want to do that. But again, the electrical industry is extraordinarily dangerous. And the legacy practices that just continue to be done, the time-based tear downs and everything else, you're breaking things, you're killing people, and you're being inefficient. And it doesn't make sense. And as you said, Ron's the data, not just from Ron, but Jack and all these guys, they bring the level of proof, that what we're saying is actually factually correct. And when we sit down at C-level suites, which we do routinely, and sit down with the chaps that we talk to, the question I get, well, why the bloody hell are we still doing it that way? And this is like people that sign off multi-million-dollar checks daily for program, and they sit down and they say to me, why are we doing it this way? Because it's this legacy mindset, Again, Terry O'Hanlon, another chap that really drives reliability, and I've got a lot of respect for Terry and what he's done for the industry. But Terry, again, when they do the shit, we're CRLs, we've both done that course, and one of the things is about change, trying to change things. Yeah. And it's like steering the Titanic with a teaspoon. It's not going. Eventually, it's going to kick over, but it's like that. I mean, I sat down with Jack. And it always tickles me when I sort of think of this. And Jack was like, 50 years ago, when the Nolan Heap study came out and reliability center maintenance was launched, and I went, yes, they got it, And he goes, I'm 50 years later, I'm sitting there going, they got it. You understand? So we need the fellows within the EPRA organization to give it the integrity that it deserves, and us as members of the board and steering committees, etc., we have a level of responsibility to EPRA to make sure that you bring something to the game. You don't listen. If you get out of life what you put into life. Yeah. You put a lot into EPRA, I guarantee you're going to get a lot out of it. But what we want from you is to put in. So the fellows that we're inviting in and trying to get to become part of EPRA are, as you say, lifelong givers. And they want to see, they get invited to do this stuff all the time. So when they do accept these invitations to become part of our organisation, we better be good at what we're doing, and we better do what we say we're going to do.
I want to end on something. I want to we'll do this a lot. And just as for people out there, Martin is also one of our co-hosts on something we call forums, where we bring people together in a panel while we're in this environment like this, where we take one topic and we share as a panel that one topic. People can, it's live, they will be recorded, but Martin and I will moderate that. So I'm sure it'll be lively. And
it should be fun, hopefully. Not too boring.
But it's kind of tied together. There's two of them tied together. There is a generational change going on. And companies are having to look. And so I'm talking specifically about Iris. When I went to Iris, I was shocked at some of the work that you were doing with virtual reality. The amount of energy and actually dollars that you're spending on that to be able to find a better way to train, to teach. So you got the training center, you've got that move, and I don't want to give away anything that you're going to bring to the market, but I was actually shocked to see that you're working on generational transition. So you got young people. I mean, they're talking geek talk that I don't even know, right? I'm going.
Tell me about it. I just pay the bill sometimes. I'm looking. What's that one for?
Generational, but also you're building a legacy for the future, a legacy for Iris. You're building a legacy for EPRA. As we do this, we're building a foundation upon which I hope 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, people could say, I remember those books. They were the first that started talking about it in the electrical world. That's kind of my legacy is EPRA, and your legacy is EPRA and what you're doing at Iris. Talk to me about generational. Where are you going?
Well, something. It's change is hard. We everybody agrees. I mean, it's a whole science around change management, and you can get 50 consultants going through the door tell you how to change something, but change is about culture for me. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Now, the culture of the industry that we are currently in, which is full of baby boomers and people that have been doing the same thing for the last 50 bloody years, and they don't see the value in what we do. It's that newfangled crap, and all. We hear and we hear and we hear. So the lovely thing for us is this, evolving workforce, into the millennials and things like that. These actually, it's much more exciting for me as a reliability practitioner because they get it. They get technology. They don't get, and they're not bloody lazy. I'm not saying these are lazy people, but they don't see the point in tearing something apart to prove it works. You don't need to do that. We have technology to do that, either IoT or whatever. So, again, I have a reasonably young workforce, but I also have some quite talented young engineers, and I have animators and game designers and all sorts of things. And it dawned on me that most of these kids sit in front, or kids, young men, I'll call them kids, but 30, 40-year-olds sit in front playing bloody video games 24/7. But they actually like that environment. They adhere to that environment. So why don't we use that environment in a training type scenario where we can get them to start to understand the value of reliability practices, the defect elimination on every level of what we do. Because it's not just about maintenance. I think people look at EPRA and say, it's electrical maintenance. No, it's not. It's electrical reliability. It's defect elimination in every single silo of business. Fully in line with standards like ISO 55000, complete asset management platforms. So we're trying to bring in technology to underpin that defect elimination standpoint. So even when you're walking in the front of the door, there's a bit of paper on the floor. That's a different get out front of the trash. It's that mindset, it's that culture. So the younger upcoming engineers are more malleable to that messaging because they've been trained with that. Now, I'm a traditional diesel mechanic, militarily trained. The military taught us the KISS principle, which was very defined, procedure-based maintenance strategy. So that's really regimented the way that I look at things, where other older engineers, maybe they come up through an apprenticeship program and, they made the tea for 18 months and swept up. Then they managed to get a toolbox for half a day. And, it was a rite of passage to get to where they are. And that entrenched in them this sort of mindset, this calendar, time-based, structural sort of system, and they're so hard to change. They really are. So by really not discounting them, but concentrating on the emerging workforce who are poorly trained. You know, in some respects, we already know. I mean, I talk about it a lot, but we have a huge skills gap. You know, the articles I've read in Forbes and things like that, and it's not in the bloody CSI techs and computer geeky guys and everything else. And all right, we need those, but plumbers and mechanics and electricians and all the artisan type trades, we just left them. It was like, well, we started to cut the training programs because maintenance is an overhead. Yeah. And that's why I hate maintenance. I'm a maintenance killer. Yeah. Maintenance for me is a failure. Yeah. If you're maintaining something, you're failed. I'm a reliability guy. Yeah. I'm all about, if it ain't got a shutdown, if I can switch it on now, in 25 years, I'm throwing it in the bin and I've never done anything on it. Yes, hallelujah. We're using technology to, and again, I diversify, but we're using technology to underpin that skill shortage. And this is why reliability and condition-based monitoring and, better practices with regards to, spares and storage. And again, if you do reliability, one thing you really start to recognize is it's not maintenance. That's just a tiny little bit. It's the whole program, your whole asset management program. So these younger guys are really attuned to listening to that message. Yeah. If we can make their life easier, they're going to love it. And guess what we do at EPRA? If you really listen to the message, we make your life safer, easier, compliant, yeah, and just fun. I mean, as a mechanic, I love fixing things. I hate maintenance. Yeah, give me something to fix. I'll tear it apart and I'll fix it. That's great. But going in and opening doors and what a absolute. I was going to say a really bad word there, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. I'm like, man, if you listen to the message from the reliability practitioners, about their shared experiences of developing these solutions, not just about the maintenance, but the people that will talk about CMMSs and spares and storage and purchasing and design and disposal. We got people across the whole gambit of the asset management platform. Yeah. Right. And that's really what we're going to do.
So last question, what does IRIS look like 10 years from now?
Well, our mission is to reduce or eliminate the amount of energized maintenance that's created today. So our whole development platform is around that. If I can develop systems and solutions that make reliability easy to do, minimum skill sets, and repeatable, that's what IRIS does. I mean, IRIS is all about making it easy and safe. That's it. So for IRIS, it's going to evolve into the IoT solutions. We do wireless sensors and data management systems. So it's not just about the little window that people always put us on. We do the whole gambit around inspection, monitoring, training, and that repeatable model. Inspect, repair. All right. That's what I do.
We're going to get out of this COVID thing, and I'm going to bring a film through. We're going to come down and film, because when you really look, when I walked through your facility and you really looked at it, that future that you just described is really evident. And I appreciate the fact that you've got a vision for that future is one that will greatly impact. Thank you also for your commitment to EPRA, and your support of what we do is amazing. So this has been a resource profile. We have profiled one of our resource practitioners. In fact, the chair of the working group for resource practitioners, Martin Robinson. Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Listen, stay safe. You know what I mean? So, sometimes, mate, I think, look, we're just in a vehicle. You know what I mean? We're not driving, mate. We're just passengers. This vehicle is going to be driven by the membership.